Welcome to Continental Divide, a guide to Colorado divorce.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Continental Divide, a guide to Colorado divorce with Kristi Anderson Wells of Wells Family Law in Denver, Colorado. A former executive compensation attorney and author of the Executive Compensation Handbook published by the American Bar Association, Kristi brings a unique perspective to divorce, complex finances, parenting, and problem solving in Colorado family law. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today we're talking about domestic violence, coercive control, and the dynamics courts and families sometimes struggle to recognize during divorce cases. Kristi, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Sean.
I would be remiss not to acknowledge the fact that we have a plethora of guests.
I've got my whole team here. These are my two partners, Chelsea Augeli and Kayla Zillman, who both work with me here, and they're both very experienced in this area.
I love that. Well, let's, the main topic for this is Alpine divorce. And I got to tell you, I'm not familiar with that term, other than it sounds like something that happens in the mountains.
Well, that is true. I'm going to throw it out to my partners here because they actually have more experience with these mountain problems than I do. So, Chelsea, what is an Alpine divorce?
So an Alpine divorce, in the social media sense, as it's been discussed recently on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, plenty of people are talking about Alpine divorce. But on the social media sense, it's a situation where one romantic partner deliberately abandons the other in like a remote, rugged outdoor setting, like a hiking trail, a mountain, on a double black diamond, either to punish them, move ahead without them, or end the relationship on the spot. In the war, I guess, the scariest cases, it may result in death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is just leaving your partner in a tree well.
Leaving your partner in a tree well is a real problem. But that's kind of what it is. And there's a historical component to it, too, because apparently in the 1890s, there was a short story written by a guy named Barr, where the husband and wife are off to the Alps for their vacation. The husband plans on taking the wife on a hike and pushing her off a mountain to get rid of her. But there's a nice little twist to it because before husband can push her off the mountain, she tells him she set him up for murder, and then she jumps to her own death.
Oh, my God.
So it's not a new concept. In fact, the title of that short story was Alpine Divorce. So,
well,
and wasn't it from like 1893? I mean,
yes, it was.
This is a very.
Why is it being discussed now? Like, why is it so popular now, or coming into, I don't want to say vogue, that sounds awful, but
I think it's in Cosmo. I mean,
it is.
yeah.
It's everywhere in the lexicon.
okay.
And we've seen a lot of it recently, particularly in the news. There was a couple who went hiking in Hawaii, and the husband tried to push wife off of a volcano, and obviously
He was awful. He was a doctor, right? And
Yeah,
when he didn't succeed, he started beating her with a rock until some
Yes.
other hikers intervened.
But it's interesting too. I feel like a part of it is this hobby component. Like we'll see in Colorado, there was a huge federal case where a man had gone kind of big game hunting in Africa with his wife and shot her in the cabin where they were staying, and then said it was an accident, and it ended up being like a several week trial that was here in Colorado for some confusing legal reasons. But it's not necessarily always Alpine, but I do think it's like definitely hobby related.
Well, in Colorado, I think the online dating scene, there are groups that specifically market themselves as, trying to partner people doing outdoor activities.
For sure.
I think it's something that as Coloradans, I wouldn't be remiss to say that I've gone on a date hiking, and that probably was a horrible idea, and very unsafe. But
We've
it's
never met, but I'd love to
happening.
take you to a remote location.
And tell me you didn't do that on a first date.
It was not first.
Well, I'm in LA, and we have, I mean, not only in LA, but I just in my neighborhood, there's got to be 3 or 4 running clubs.
Mm.
And these are, large groups of people running together. And I guess you could push someone into traffic. But different. It's a different thing.
Well, and it's kind of related to DV, to domestic violence, because there's a question. Is this just poor judgment? You just have a partner who is very strong at whatever they do. They're a strong snowboarder, and they don't really realize that they just took you to the top of something you can't get down. And then they take off without you without realizing it. I mean, that could happen. Or is this a sort of systemic thing that reflects a form of domestic violence where you should be afraid if someone takes you, road biking to the top of a 10,000-foot road and, then leaves you, rides off,
Yeah.
and you're not really capable of making it the whole way and you're in the middle of nowhere. So that's where the connection is here for the discussion today about domestic violence and coercive control.
At what point does it cross over? Or, I mean, is it like, well, when you see it, like, oh, what's the issue? Like just a callous partner who never waits for you when you're out on a bike ride. And, oh, you do this all the time and it's sociopathic behavior. I mean, how do you know?
I think the question is it a pattern? I think this is a red flag that many people may not perceive as a form of domestic violence or coercive control. But have there been other indications in the relationship that they're willing to kind of put you in a vulnerable position where you don't have a sense of safety, whether that's on a mountain or not? Is this a red flag? Is this something that's happened before? Is it because they think that you're capable? From a feminist perspective, it's kind of annoying to think that only, that women are being left in these positions, of extreme sports, and that they're not capable. But I think the reality is it could be even something as simple as like, you have asthma, the weather's getting bad, they want to push on, and your, alarm is going off saying, I don't feel safe. I think we should stop. And what decision is made at that point for your safety as their partner? Or are they just going to push on and force you to discomfort? I mean, there's so many other things that could apply to.
And I think too, with the pattern, the other important thing to think about is the intent behind it. So when we're looking at things like coercive control and domestic violence, the abusive party is trying to deprive the other party of autonomy, of meaningful ability to control his or her body, safety, express their feelings around those things. And so, you could have a clueless boyfriend. My husband, I yell at him all the time because we have e-bikes and he like zips off much faster on his e-bike than I do, but he's just ADHD. But if you look at, kind of the intent and why is this person acting in the way to make me feel left behind, unsafe, along with what Chelsea was mentioning around the pattern, I think that helps you identify some of the problematic behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that most professionals will tell you that DV is an escalating issue. So whenever it doesn't show up on the first date, you'll have little signs that you'll dismiss. You're like a lobster in a pot. First, you're in a nice, refreshing bath, and then you're in a hot tub, and pretty soon you're in a really dangerous situation. And that progresses over the course of a relationship. So the beginning signs that you see could be signs of a real red flag that you should pay attention to in a long-term relationship, or it could just be a one-time thing. But we all do know that if we work in this industry, that the DV that ultimately unfolds had a history that built up to that point. So got to keep your eyes open.
Is and this, I mean, you're the experts. We're talking about coercive control, which I think I understand. Is coercive control kind of a precursor to domestic violence, or is it a form of, you know what I mean, where I'm going with that? Because coercive control can be somewhat subtle at first, it seems like. So I'm just curious what you're.
Well, Chelsea's got a case right now where they're in the thick of it. Chelsea, what is coercive control?
So Evan Stark, who is the sociologist that effectively developed the concept of coercive control, he defines coercive control as an ongoing pattern of domination that extends kind of beyond these discrete, what in the domestic violence sense would be violent physical types of incidents that kind of historically were viewed as domestic violence, right? But this encompasses kind of the more deeper, like Kristi said, the underlying layer. Intimidation, isolation, degradation, I can't say that one, micro regulation of daily life, and this kind of systematic deprivation of autonomy. And so when we look, it's actually kind of a controversial subject among domestic violence advocates. Like, is coercive control a form of domestic violence? Yes, but I think the pattern piece is the critical aspect. That sure, like if you take your partner's keys because they shouldn't drive drunk, or if you throw your keys at your partner because you're irritated with them, did that happen
You are
once?
drunk. No.
Yeah. Or are they, you sent them your location so that they know you got to your destination safely. And then they ask you a question about that later because you still share your location with them. Is that coercive control? No. But I think there's really interesting examples that I would say a large majority of my clients who are in a coercive and controlling relationship have no idea that that is what they're experiencing because of how kind of micro and covert some of these behaviors become, and just become part of your daily life and your
Yeah.
relationship with this person. So, like, for example, um isolation is probably the one that most people don't realize is happening to them. So, preventing them from going out to see their friends, moving them to a location where they have no support, making sure that like they anywhere that they go, you're with, they're with you, or you have to tell them where your location is. I think that's something that some people on a micro level don't realize is happening as it's happening unless it's quite blatant. But like financial control
Budget control, yeah.
Yep.
is the one I think we see, especially in higher income, or higher asset estates, is that it may be someone's just kind of normal reality. Oh, well, like my husband only lets me spend $3,000 a month. That's what he gives me. And that's what I use to buy our groceries and pay for our expenses. And little does, this party know that her husband makes $50,000 a month. And $3,000 a month is quite low to, have somebody budgeted on.
Right. And that spouse may not have any idea of what bank accounts exist
Mm.
or what properties are owned. I mean, in this day and age, not understanding the financial situation in a large marital estate, it's much more common than you would expect. But it's also the lack of visibility, and combined with that limited budgeting is one of the telltale signs of, oh, there's a control dynamic here going on, and it's something to keep your eyes open on.
That
Yeah.
piece too is interesting to me. Chelsea gave the example of higher income or higher asset cases. I've seen arguments on both sides of the financial abuse coin when it's not a particularly high asset case, and you have a spouse who is very concerned about money, or say you have, needs like a special needs child that you need to put away for, or one spouse can't work. There are very limited opportunities to bring in money. And so one spouse is financially really trying to keep an eye on everything. And so it's a challenging nuance to really go back to figuring out, is this coercive control, or is this person really freaked out about being able to pay for their expenses and support the family? And I think it all goes back to, again, what Chelsea was talking about, the pattern as well as the intent behind what the person's doing.
And what about litigation abuse?
So there's not an actual like legal definition of litigation abuse. I think the concept is that once a relationship is ended, once a divorce has been finalized, I would say this happens actually in cases where parties just have a child together and aren't married. That because that person has now lost the opportunity to control, the other person, their behavior, whatever it may be, or they feel that they've just lost a sense of control in general, use the court system to kind of perpetuate their abuse. And it can become so clear in cases where the subject of the litigation has nothing to do with the child. And it is totally, very vengeful, retaliatory type of behavior. And it frankly bankrupts people. I mean,
Yeah.
we have cases that I have cases going back to like, the case numbers like 2013, 2015. These people have been in litigation longer than I've been a lawyer. And, they've probably spent $1 million. And that sounds like a crazy number, but when you're spending $50,000-$60,000 a year simply just to maintain
That
your status
unhealthy
quo,
connection. Yeah.
basically. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it tends to happen with a party who is abusive, has the resources, and the other party doesn't, and they know that. And so the court system becomes a mechanism to kind of perpetuate and put them in a very vulnerable position that
Yeah.
they may not be able to afford a lawyer or kind of protect their child or defend themselves.
Yeah.
It's probably the most rampant issue in post decree cases, especially where there's a party who has the resources to continue to do
Yeah.
that.
Well, all that said, it's my job to tell you we're out of time very nearly. And I want to ask you, because some of it, it's like this, like it sneaks up on you, this coercive control. And I'm just curious, and I'll throw this out to the three of you. What if someone thinks that they're in this kind of a situation, or literally they, their partner, their spouse has left them at the top of the mountain? Like how do you tell them to keep an eye out or identify or protect themselves? What do you think?
I mean, if you've been left at the top of the mountain more than once, leave them
Or her.
or her.
Leave them.
And what if they apologize? It's like, oh my God, I thought you were right behind me.
I mean, it can happen. My husband and I do a lot of skiing together, and it might be a flat lay day and he wants to go one direction, I'm going another. It can happen.
Yeah.
But if there's a reasonable discussion about what's going on and how it frightened you and it happens again, that's a red flag.
That's a red flag. Get out of Dodge. Well, we are out of time. So great to talk to all of you. Thank you, Kristi. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
I look forward to a future conversations. That's it for today's episode of Continental Divide, a guide to Colorado divorce. If you'd like to learn more about Kristi Anderson Wells and the team at Wells Family Law, visit their website, wellsfamilylawcolorado.com. This podcast provides a general overview of a legal topic and should not be considered legal advice. If you need advice regarding your specific situation, please contact an attorney. Thanks for listening. I'm Sean O'Connor. And don't forget, leave us a review, maybe a thumbs up, or share a link with a friend who might benefit from this kind of information. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.